All right, let's get going. Thank you everybody for joining us today and welcome to StoneTalk. My name is Jason Osgood. I am the Senior Director of Distribution for StoneHardscapes, and we're excited today to bring you the first installment of a monthly webinar series that's going to dive into everything stone related, everything you need to know about natural stone. Over the next 12 months, we'll talk about things such as installation practices, things like care and maintenance, the different types of natural stones that are available, where the stone comes from, what are the benefits of a segmental deck, which is a natural stone fits into over a concrete or a concrete segmental deck, and the different types of grades of stone and why it's a benefit to me. So we're really excited about getting rolling with this. One of the biggest questions we always get asked is the installation, and the first two episodes of this are going to dive right into the installation aspects of. We're going to start with the basic practices, and we're going to start with basic principles of installation. We get questioned all the time here at StoneHardscapes, how does natural stone get installed? Do we need to install it over concrete? Can we install it just like regular pavers? And absolutely. The answer always is absolutely. You can install pavers just like you install any other type of segmental decking or concrete decking. You do not need to install it over concrete. And what we're going to talk today, we're going to talk about really the 7 basic principles of installation. As we move forward in this web series, we'll get into a little more advanced principles on installation, but today is going to be just basic principles. So with that, thank you very much again for joining us today, and let's get started. What we see in installation are 7 basic steps to installation. There's your site prep, your excavation, your base and sand install, your paver install, the border, the edge restraints, and your cleaning. These are the basic. Now, depending on the type of installation you have going on, whether it's around a new construction swimming pool or it's a standalone deck itself, there might be some added steps to this, or you might not have to do some of the steps to this. We'll talk about a little bit during this episode today, but really these are the 7 basic that you'll have for every type of installation. So let's get right into it. Site prep. First thing you're always going to want to do is you're going to want to mark out your area. Mark out where the deck itself is going. Now, if you've got putting a deck in that's around a construction of a swimming pool, your deck area is going to be marked out somewhat. So you're still going to need to mark that deck area out a little bit. If you have a geometric shaped deck, whether it's around a geometric shaped pool or standalone, then a string line works very well. The advantage of a string line is that you can set your finished elevation with that string line as well. On a free-form deck, marking paint works the best. Obviously, you're not going to be able to set your elevation with marking paint. It's really difficult to run a radius with a string line. So really, those are your 2 types of ways of marking the area itself out. Once you mark that area out, you know where the deck is going to be. Very important aspect of this is you need to locate your underground utilities. During construction of a swimming pool, hopefully those utilities have already been marked and moved. If not, this is a very important time to do this. If you've got a sprinkler system, you want to go ahead and find those feed lines to that sprinkler system, and you want to cap those off somewhere outside the deck area. One of the last things you want to do is start digging, excavating that dirt out from underneath the deck on an existing sprinkler line. You flood that area now you have a mess. Most importantly, you want to locate your underground utilities. There's a nationwide utility locator called 811. You can call 811. They'll come in, they'll mark out power lines, phone lines, cable lines. You do not want to get there and cut those lines during construction. So make sure all of that's taken care of, make sure all that's marked out. and that you have easy access to the area that you're going to be excavating. Once you've prepped the site, once you've marked out your area, once you've capped off your sprinkler lines and marked all your underground utility, step 2 is going to be your excavation. The first part of that is removing your soil. Now, the ICPI, which is the Interlocking Concrete Paving Institute, recommends that you should excavate no less than 6 inches of soil. Added to that, your existing subgrade is really going to dictate to you the depth of your excavation. If you're in a sandy area and you don't get down to some solid base, doesn't matter how well you do your base material, the base is going to be put on top of a non-stable subgrade that the base is going to fail. So you want to make sure you get down to some really solid subgrade. For residential, you're 6 to 8 inches. For commercial, you're 8 to 24. Laterally, when you excavate, you want to excavate about 12 inches outside of the deck area itself. That helps you run your base material farther out, gives you a really solid foundation to lay your pavers onto. Once you remove your existing soil, at this point, you're able to really kind of set your elevation and your pitch of the deck itself. Keeping in mind that a segmental deck or a paver deck needs to have at least 1/8 of an inch of pitch away from either the pool or the structure of the house itself. So in a 2-foot span, you're going to have 1 inch of elevation pitch. This allows the water to run away. What you do not want to happen is to put a deck around a swimming pool or a deck next to a house and have the water run back to the house. Typical concrete is 1/4 of an inch. Segmental decking is 1/8 of an inch. Keep that in mind when you're talking to somebody or you're doing the installation yourself, that is very important aspect to this of making sure that your elevation is correct and your pitch is correct away from the structure that you're building from. Second to that, you're going to run a plate compactor over it. Once you run the plate compactor over that subgrade, it's going to help to ensure the consistency of your subgrade compaction. Like we talked a second ago, if your subgrade is unstable, then the base itself will become unstable. So you run a plate compactor over it, helps to ensure the compaction of your existing subgrade. Step 3 to the 7-step process is your base and your bedding sand installation. Now, to determine the amount of base that you need to put into or under your pavers themselves, you want to take the thickness of the paver minus about 1 inch of bedding sand to your finished elevation. That'll give you the thickness of your base. Keep in mind, base material itself will compact to about 75 to 80% of its pre-compacted thickness. So if you're putting 4 inches of base in there, when I run a plate compactor over it, it's going to compact to about 3 inches. So that's a very important aspect to understand and know when you're calculating the depth of your excavation. And then base material itself should not be compacted more than 4 inches at a time. So if I've got to put 8 inches of base material in for my install, then I want to put 4 inches in, I want to compact it, then I want to put another 4 inches in and compact those. If I'm trying to compact more than 4 inches at a time, I'm running the risk of that bottom part of that base material not getting a proper compaction, and then my base itself failing. Now, base material is anything like a crushed aggregate or road base. Road base is typical what is used in most municipalities in most areas of the United States. The important part of that is to make sure that you have a material that when compacted gives you a relatively solid form. It's not going to be rigid, but it's going to be solid. It gives you a nice foundation to build. Again, remembering that you should only do about 3 to 4 inches at a time. When you put the base material in, you rake it out. You're going to want to dampen it with water, and then you're going to run a plate compactor over it in multiple directions. You run it in multiple directions to help to ensure that compaction. And this is a nice visual of what road base is. As you can see, it's crushed aggregate, little concrete in there. So when it is compacted, it gives you a really nice form. The next step would be your bedding sand. Now, bedding sand must be a coarse aggregate or an angular sand. You cannot use a rounded sand or a play sand, or in the pool industry, a filter sand. What will end up happening is that sand will bleed out from under the pavers over time, and then the deck itself will start to sag and fail. So it has to be a coarse aggregate sand. Now, the ICPI will recommend between 3/4 and an inch of thickness. Once you put the sand in, you're going to rake it out, and then you're going to screed it out like you're trialing concrete, and that's going to give you a really nice surface. The bedding sand is incredibly important. I cannot, as an installer, lay pavers, and should not lay pavers over the base itself. The base is going to give me a solid foundation, but it's not going to give me a level surface to lay the pavers down. The pavers will rock. The bedding sand will give me a nice cushioned layer for the pavers to sit on and help really lock those pavers in. And a nice visual of what bedding sand is. Some people like to call bedding, or some terminology for bedding sand will be construction sand, but it needs to be a coarse aggregate or an angular sand. Now comes the fun part. If the base is done right, the excavation's done properly, the bedding sand's done properly, laying the pavers should be your easiest part. If the excavation's wrong, the base is wrong, and the sand is incorrect, laying the pavers are gonna be difficult, because you're gonna be fighting the elevation and the pitch the entire time. Laying the pavers, once everything's done correctly prior to, laying the pavers should be like putting together a puzzle. Now, the first part of laying your pavers is to find your starting point. There's two real ways to do this, and there's two schools of thought to this. If I'm laying pavers around a swimming pool, and it's an angular, a geometric shaped swimming pool, then I want to start the paver install along the swimming pool line. And with that, I want to find the most visual aspect of the pool itself. Usually that's looking out of the house, something out of the kitchen, but somewhere that that's the most visual aspect of that pool is where I want to start the pavers. That's going to allow me to have a really nice look, and it's going to minimize the cuts, and the cuts that I do have, I'll be able to hide along the house. If you think about that aspect, most of the time you don't pay attention to what's right along the house itself, so you can hide the cuts there. And this gives you a really nice, strong straight line to start on. If you're laying the pavers on a freeform pool or around a freeform pool, then you're going to need to start the install along the house itself, usually in a corner somewhere, and that gives you two straight lines to be able to build your pattern off of. You're going to have cuts around the pool. That's inevitable. There's no way to hide that. So you want to start where you have the most structurally sound part of that, which is going to be your house. That helps lock in your pattern. When you're installing the pavers themselves, you need to install on a straight line. Don't try to cut as you install in straight lines. This allows you the most effective and efficient way to install the pavers. Now, a typical install crew will have 5 to 7 people there installing. They'll have 2 people laying the pavers themselves. And as they get around roughly halfway done, someone will go back and start putting the cuts in. But if you start trying to lay the cuts as you're installing the pavers, the time it's going to take to do this is not going to be cost effective. So you always want to lay pavers on a straight line. And then periodically check your lines. If you just start laying the pavers down and take off and not pay attention, a little gap here will be a massive gap 10 feet away. So you're constantly wanting to lay the pavers or to check your lines. Now, installing the paver itself. In the hardscapes world, we like to use the terminology of click and drop method. When you install a paver, you want to hold the paver above the bedding sand itself, press it into the adjacent paver and drop it into place. You never ever want to slide the paver into place. Sliding the paver does two things to you. It removes some of the bedding sand from underneath, so your elevation is going to be incorrect, and it pushes sand in between the pavers, which is not going to give you a proper lock in between the pavers themselves. So you want to install the paver in that click and drop method. Hold it above the sand, put it against the ones next to it, drop it into place. Then you want to use a dead blow hammer. And it's very important to use a dead blow hammer. And you tap the paver as you're putting it down to seed it into the sand. You cannot use a mallet or a metal hammer because the vibration from that tool could crack the paver itself. A dead blow hammer eliminates the vibration and gives you the ability to use it to install the paver itself. This last part I cannot stress enough. Stay off the sand. Too many times I have been on job sites and I have trained crews who want to lay the sand down and then walk all over the sand. So the entire time, half of what you're doing is fixing the sand. Stand on the pavers. Use the pavers as a pedestal. Use the pavers as a loading point. When you finished with your bedding sand, you should not walk on that again. Lay your pavers, start using your pavers as your decking area. Work smarter, not harder. Now that your pavers are done, you've got your entire pattern laid in, you've got your cuts laid in, you've got to lock that decking in. So you've got to decide what type of border you're going to have on your deck. Now, there are different types of borders. There's generally 5 types of borders. You can carry your pattern all the way out to the edge of the deck. You can pour a concrete border around the outside like a footer. You can do a 12 by 12 border. You can do a soldier course or a sailor course. What that helps to do is define the deck area and help put a finishing touch on that install itself. Now, the majority of what's done in today's world are really 3 different, are the running the pavers all the way to the edge, and then your soldier course and your sailor course. And I get asked all the time, what's the difference between a soldier course and a sailor course? And if you look to the left, the 2 pictures on the left of the screen shows you examples of a soldier course and a sailor course. And the way to understand which one is which, if you could think of on a sailor course of the pavers touching end to end, like boats. So sailors, boats end to end. Soldier course, laying side to side. It's like soldiers standing in line. There's your sailor course and your soldier course. Now, the deck is done. The border is done. We have to lock the pavers in. If we don't do anything to restrain the pavers, eventually they're going to work their way loose. So we have to install an edge restraint. Now, the edge restraints, depending on the type of edge restraints that you're using, can be done prior to the paver installation, or they can be done after the paver installation. There's really 3 types of restraints that are used in the industry today, and we'll talk about the 3 here. The first one is a concrete edging, and I've highlighted that. Now we'll look at these a little more in depth here in a second. The second is your plastic edging, and your third is a concrete footer. Now, the concrete edging must be done after the pavers are installed. The plastic edging can be done either before the pavers are installed or after, but the concrete footer has to be done prior to. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. The concrete edging, the advantage to this one is it's quick, it's easy, and it's by far the least expensive of the 2. You run your pavers all the way out, you come in, you dig a slight little trench next to the pavers, you pour the concrete in, you take a trowel, you feather it up to the paver itself, and it's done. The disadvantage to a concrete edging is that you cannot run your soil or your sod all the way up to the deck. So your finished look isn't as clean. You will always see a little concrete band around the pavers themselves. The plastic edging gives you a really nice, clean look. The disadvantage to the concrete edging is it is expensive, and you have to ensure that when you put the secure spike down, it gets down into your subgrade. If you just run the spike to secure it down through the compacted aggregate base, the base will eventually break apart and your edging will break apart. But it gives you a nice, clean, finished look. Here's a nice picture of what the concrete edging is. You can get those in straight, or you can get those in radius form as well. And then a concrete footer. Concrete footer will by far give you the cleanest finished look. You don't see anything next to the pavers. You can run the topsoil right next to it, run the sod right next to it. The disadvantage to a concrete footer is it has to be done before the pavers are laid, and you have to ensure that you have the proper pitch and elevation, because those pavers are going to run right on top of that footer. So you have to make sure that the top of that footer is exactly where you need it to be on the installation. Now that we've got the deck done, we've got the footers in, we've got the restraint in, everything's done, the deck is finished. Now comes the cleaning. This is an incredibly important aspect to ensure the aesthetic beauty of the finished product. This is the time now to run along and adjust any of the loose or unlevel pavers to get in there and really sort of clean up the installation. First step of this is you're going to want to remove any of the dirt or the dust or debris from the installation using a power blower or a broom, keeping in mind that you don't want to blow it into a finished pool, or you don't want to blow it into the house. But this gives you the ability to get rid of all of that. During the installation, if you're cutting a lot of pavers, there's going to be a lot of dust on your paver. You want to remove it first. Then you come along with a hose, and you can hose down the deck for any residual debris. This will also help with some compaction. If you have some loose pavers here or there, and you have to put a little bit of sand in between them to lock them in, hosing the deck down will allow that sand to really penetrate through those gaps and lock those pavers in. At this time, you can use a little mixture of soap or a diluted mixture of chlorine just to help with that final cleaning. But keep in mind that if you're doing this deck during the construction of a swimming pool, you're gonna have to come back and do another clean once the pool is done. When the deck is done, the construction of the swimming pool is not done. There's still going to be guys walking on it. There's still some construction going on. There's still some final cleanup to be done. So you're going to have to come back and clean again. And if you're going to take it to the next step and seal the pavers, you're going to want to ensure that you have a really good clean just prior to that. The last aspect of this is to enjoy. You've done some really nice work. You've done all these steps properly. And what you're going to see is an absolute incredible visual aspect of the pool. Keeping in mind that the biggest aspect aesthetically of a swimming pool is always the deck. The average deck in the United States right now is about 950 square feet. The deck in a beautiful natural stone can make or break the swimming pool itself. So that is a quick overview of the basic practices and the basic processes of the best practices of the installation of a deck. Next month, we're going to look into advanced principles of the installation. We'll dig deeper into compaction. We'll dig deeper into drainage and moisture retention. Being able to understand those better will help eliminate a lot of issues that happen on natural decks and natural stone decks when it comes to mold and mildew growth. We'll talk and we'll dig into the proper type of cutting techniques necessary to install, to the installation of natural stone. And if we have time next month, we'll dig into some coping installations. But with that being said, this is my contact information. Again, my name is Jason Osgood, and I am the Senior Director of Distribution for StoneHardscapes. Please reach out, ask me questions. One of the advantages that you have with partnering with StoneHardscapes is we will come out and we will help train your crews on the installation. We will help give them the tools and the techniques to be able to do this so that you are comfortable with selling natural stones. I'm always here to answer your questions. So with that being said, do I have any questions before we end this? No? Again, for us here at StoneHardscapes, thank you very much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you very much.